Welcome to the episode 2 of Connected Teamwork podcast. And it's co hosted today by me, Olena Sergeeva, and Carson Heady. We're going to be addressing the topics of how to make teams both high performing and also highly enjoyable, for us being there and working with the team. And last time we talked about the value of connecting in the beginning of the meeting, right? So there is a connectedness right there, right? And so that's what we'll do to begin to kick off our meeting with Carson. We'll do the check-in, and we'll follow the same process we invited you to try last time, which is answering the questions: how are you feeling, how are you growing, and what's your intention for this podcast. So, Carson, I'll ask you to go first. Feeling,
Awesome.
growth, and intention.
Yeah, Elena, thanks so much. Great to be with you here today. Sorry I missed the last episode, but you did a smashing job getting us started. So, how am I feeling? I think I'm feeling a lot like many leaders out there right now, where we're being pulled into a lot of different directions, and we're being challenged like we've never been challenged before. Challenged to look at things, our business, our team, how we're working with and collaborating with teams and customers looks different than it's ever looked. And so we're being challenged, and we're being forced to grow. That kind of segues me right into my next step. So I welcome that. I think, I always find it that when I'm most challenged and, when I'm forced to look for alternative solutions, that's when I'm doing my best growth. And so that's how I feel like I'm growing currently as a leader, is as we're being faced with these new challenges, new ways to meet people where they are, and needing to lean in and get creative. Those are the types of things. Those are the types of areas where I'm growing today. My intention, really, this was kind of born out of, just really wanting to focus on the importance of connected teamwork. We ran a couple of polls recently. We're going to talk a little bit about the results of those, what kind of came out of those, what people strive to get out of their team work and their team meetings, but also some of the big distractions that come out of that. So really my intention today is to continue to set the foundation for what this project is, which is helping empower and enable connected teamwork, but really uncovering what's at the heart of it. How can we all continue to grow and get better as we seek to establish connected teamwork? Elena, what are your thoughts today?
Well, first of all, welcome, Carson. Happy to have you here today. And in terms of my checking, how am I feeling? I feel a little anxious, about how this podcast is gonna go. But I also feel very happy we're doing this because um, my growth is in actually being more visible and doing more stuff that's that others can learn from or share, and being connected that way to a much broader audience. My intention for the podcast is to really focus on the teamwork and focus on each of us within the team, and helping myself and others to find ways of how do I bring the best in me to the teamwork, and how do I help others to bring the best in them to the teamwork. So that's my intention. And with that, I'm in.
Wonderful. Welcome.
So the what we would like to focus on today is like several topics. Well, we started with the check-ins because they really set the tone. They help align the energies, align the intentions, just like what we did right now with Carson. um, and they create a human connection, right? And it's interesting that one of the polls, right, that we did was on the value. What's the value of the meetings to you? And we gave several options, and the majority of respondents chose personal connection as being the valuable aspect of the meeting. However, we also got a very interesting comment from one of our listeners, Trudy Mixon, who said another interesting question for check-in is, what's distracting you right now? So, so I propose to explore this a little more, right? And maybe I'll ask Carson, what's distracting you right now? Is there anything that's distracting you?
No, I love that question, and so we'll talk about that poll as well because there's some really good insights that came out of it, and frankly, as well as this podcast continues to evolve and find its voice, this is a challenge and an invitation. We'd love to have people engage with our show. You can obviously put comments in the chat. We'll react and respond to those in real time. But we also have an open call if you'd like to be a guest on a future episode and talk about how you're working with your team to provide connectedness. That's super, super important. It's interesting, Olena. I kind of started my leadership journey in an environment that was very different than today. Was not really trained and coached to hone in on that personal aspect right out of the gate. It was always straight to business. And so one of my recent mentors and leaders actually really instilled in me the importance of kind of doing that check-in methodology. And while at first it's not necessarily a comfortable muscle, it's something that we can develop over time. And we just kind of go in with that mindset to connect right out of the gate. But inevitably, there are distractions. And especially as we've, over the last 3+ years, gone into this hybrid world where a lot of our interactions are video. I can tell you, while I even sit here right now on this show, I get notification after notification after notification. My screen flashes, things pop up, and there's a whole world going on outside of our conversations that we're in, no matter how important these meetings are. I think those are the types of things that are the most distracting. We, put out this poll last week. And it was, what is your most common distraction from truly connected teamwork? 69% of respondents said multitasking and notifications. And I think we would all be hard pressed to not admit that there are absolutely times where now we're in this kind of back-to-back world. I don't have the commute that I used to have where I would go into the office and have that time, that buffer time built in to, transit from meeting to meeting. Now, a lot of times we find ourselves back to back and we find ourselves having to squeeze in work and projects amidst all of these smattering of calls throughout the day. And by the by, while we're on these conversations, we see notifications pop up. And despite our best intentions, we get distracted by those things because, sometimes these are the fires that pop up and they can render us less effective, and they also damage our connectedness. What are your thoughts, Olena? I'd love to hear what you find to be most distracting and takes away from your connected teamwork.
Well, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, how does it feel to be the leader in a situation where you know that each of your team member gets these notifications and multiple tasks, and you are the one who is actually assigning some of those tasks, and so what do you do to really not so much from a technical point of view, right? In terms of like, well, I don't know, turning off some of the messengers so you don't see the notifications during the meeting, and that allows you to focus. But just in terms of like the energy, how to deal with um, presence of the multiple, thought trails and the minds trying to run in many directions and so on, and actually be present and focus. So one thing is probably clarifying the agenda at the beginning, making sure we really align on what we're trying to achieve. And very often what I find, things that you think will happen in a meeting are not necessarily that should happen, because when people actually come to a meeting, some things already changed, and you really need to clarify what's the priority right now that needs to be addressed. And through the checking, and everyone being honest about what's on their mind, right, you could actually change the agenda and stay flexible. And I think in some of our meetings before with you, Carson, we talked about the fact that the rigidity, right? When you come with a clear vision of what the meeting is about, the outcomes that you should achieve, and so on, is not that helpful very often. So when you really focus on this business side of things and making sure you achieve, I don't know, the discussion of 10 or 20 or whatever questions that you want to achieve, and you kind of ignoring the what's happening in the Zoom or in the room, you may really have a very, I don't know, unsatisfactory and frustrating meeting with limited outcomes, and that's been my experience in my business management career, where I had to learn to develop that flexibility and going with the flow, and admitting that everyone brings in something that's of value, even if it looks like a huge distractor. So an example that comes to me is fairly recent, from working with Hilke Faber, where in one of our meetings, where there were only three people, two of us have been severely distracted. We came with something on our minds. I personally came with something rather personal, that was happening in my family, that was disturbing and kept my mind going, in that place. And another person had something else. And after we did the check in, Hilke actually, sensing that energy, said, "You know what? We're not going to do what we planned to do. Instead, let's do a meditation," which was like, wow. And we did a meditation. It didn't take a lot of time, but it totally changed the energy of the meeting. And at that moment, it really helped me to connect to everyone in the meeting, and also to why I'm doing what I'm doing with this group of people, and really helped me to shift. So that's what I was thinking about. I'm sure you have some interesting examples, Carson, too.
Yeah, Elena, that's extremely powerful, and it reminds me of times. I've been in some very large organizations and some very small organizations in my career, in my leadership career, and through that, comes some mergers and acquisitions, comes layoffs. I've been in situations where I've been laid off, and sometimes as a leader, the tough news has to be delivered, or perhaps something has transpired, and your team is feeling it. Morale is taking a hit for whatever reason. And frankly, it doesn't make sense in those moments to go in and handle it business as usual. I can tell you in experiences where maybe our business has had layoffs, or drastic changes to the organization that impacted a lot of folks. What was important for me, even in a virtual setting, was setting up a team call, whether it was impromptu or repurposing a call that had an original intention, and just going direct on video and speaking directly to the team and what they were going through, allowing them to talk, allowing them to vent, allowing them to share frustrations that they were having. A lot of times as leaders, we have to, stay at the pulse of our team. We have to understand their why, what motivates them, what makes them tick, why are they here, but also what do they care most about. And a lot of our team members, they care about the vision. They signed on to this for a very specific reason, and when things go awry, or go into a direction that they didn't anticipate, sometimes it can make their support and their buy-in wavering. But we're all people, and that's the key element, is that we have to connect with people as people. I have a friend of mine who he always likes to say, I'm in the sales arena, that sales isn't business to business, it's person to person. People are working with people, and that's very true of the teams that we work with as well. And I think there's a lot of best practices that we can take into how we construct our team, how we construct team meetings, things of that stature. You talked very importantly about reading the room. I think that's why the check-in is so important, because if there's something that needs to or should be addressed at the onset of a meeting that's top of mind for people, we have to talk about that, because it's front and center for our people, and it's what matters most in those moments. The other thing that I do often is I will solicit people before the meeting for agenda items. I have around 80 people in my team meetings every week. And so I'll message all of them in advance of the meeting and just ask them, hey, is there something that you'd like to cover or see? This makes them an active participant. Now they're a part of the meeting. That's going to minimize some of the distractions, because they're part of formulating that agenda. They're part of the plan. Also, encouraging video share. My team is scattered all throughout the country, as I know yours is as well. We can't all sit in a room together all the time. So encouraging video shares so that we can see that we're actively engaged. It's a lot easier when you know that someone's making eye contact with the camera and paying attention, as opposed to always sitting down, looking in another direction and typing. You can tell that people are a lot more actively engaged. And I think when we're on video, we can do that a lot more frequently. And then lastly, you nailed this, being very clear on desired outcomes, coming to the meeting with a desired outcome in mind and a framework. Frameworks are important, but we don't have to be super rigid in the agenda, provided that we're able to have some good dialogue. That was actually the second place on the poll that we ran last week, around what people look forward to in their team meetings. Number one was the connectedness piece, but number two was discussion and dialogue and debate, and that opportunity to really have conversations with each other that help each other express perspectives, but also grow. That is how we grow in those particular situations. I was encouraged with my team that they have focused time, schedule block time, so that you can get done some of the things that you need to get done. That will prevent some of the feeling that we have that we need to multitask. But also, like you said, assigning very specific roles. I coach my team every day to come to the table with daily non-negotiables so that they know what they have to get done and they can prioritize those things before some of the minutia that is inevitable that happens to us every day. Those types of things can make sure that we have the bandwidth to give our full attention to our team settings.
That's really a great list, Carson. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure it's just going through this list in my mind. I'm like, wow, that's like a whole spectrum of things that the leader could do. Something else that I was thinking about is a clear feedback, because sometimes people can, vent for a little too long or go into a place of, helplessness or something, or anger for a little too much time for the big group in particular, right? So being right there on the spot, delicate and yet direct in terms of giving feedback, it's like, is this really helping us right now, right? I also recall the feedback I personally got from Helke after some of our meetings, where I reflected about that, and we had a discussion on how do you determine whether it's worth, taking the group time and speaking about something or not, right? And I guess one way to look at it is asking yourself, is it going to serve the group, what I'm going to be saying right now, whether it's a question or it's a statement. There is a delicate balance between my own intentions, right, following whatever agenda I came with, and what serves the group, right? And also egos, right? So if what I'm saying is purely a desire to be, I don't know, liked by everyone, or to be noticed, oh my God, she's so smart, she has this beautiful idea, right? Or other, ego serving purposes, it's a good way to check with you before actually taking the time of the group. So I don't know if that creates any resonance with you and what you observed in your meetings.
No doubt about it, Elena. I think it's so important that we show up, from a place of servant leadership. I always keep going back in my mind to the question, why is connected teamwork so important? And you really hit on this on the last session. It's all about, connected teams do their best work. They understand each other. There's a foundation of trust and transparency. We know what each other's unique superpowers are. We know where we can add value to other members of the team, and frankly, how we can grow by learning from those other members of the team. Now, the leader puts a lot of this in motion. Because the leader steps in, and it's so important that you seek to be the hero maker and not the hero. The best leaders are the ones that are able to put their ego aside and really look to support their team and deliver wins to their team. I've found from a leadership lens, the best value that I can bring to my team often is helping them to see around corners based on experiences that I've had previously. Um, a lot of times leaders will come in with perhaps experience that's very similar to the people that were on their team, and they come in with that level of credibility. But the last thing that you want to do is come in and start telling your team what to do, or to act like I've been there and done that and my way is the only way. Because frankly, from a leadership lens, you want to realize everyone on your team, whether you hired them or you inherited them, everyone on your team earned the right to be in their seat. And so it's not up to you as a leader to tell them how to do their job. It's up to you as a leader to understand who they are as a person, what matters to them, what motivates them, how they feel about their level of mastery of their role, and also their career lens. Because ultimately, we want to enable them to achieve what they want to achieve. I've always looked at this, kind of that leader employee relationship as kind of a contract. The person comes to an organization, comes to a team, and they agree to be the person that they pledged to be on interview day, to bring their passion and their enthusiasm and their best selves. Now, of course, things can happen to detract from that. We have to, recalibrate and rekindle our love, our passion for the contract all the time as employees. But the leader agrees to make sure that the team member has a conducive, fertile ground, a great foundation for success and for doing their best work. They've got the training, they've got the resources, and that they have the support in order to do their best work. And I think that's what connected teamwork is really all about, is making sure that we as leaders show up with a servant mindset. We are looking to see where we can best serve each of these folks to lift them up and empower them to do their best work.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking also about speaking of servant leadership, right? There is also a question of again going back to like the intentions that you might have. Like you may have a vision or an idea, right? That's really really great, right? But then you have the team with maybe a little different intentions, or maybe with different speed, basically, right? You see some things that's happening tomorrow, right, and they're not happening tomorrow. So how do we bridge that? What maybe some ideas from your experience in terms of aligning even on the speed of achieving a vision or a goal?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think it's all in being collaborative, because as a leader, you never have to have all of the answers, but you want to know where to look for them. And a lot of being in a leadership role is being able to connect those dots and understand, if I'm doing a project with my team, or let's say in my realm where I'm working on a complex deal scenario. You want to be able to look at and map out these milestones, and there's a lot of different people that touch that. Working in a large organization, there could be multiple layers, multiple levels of business, multiple people that are touching or that have a vested interest in that collaboration. You also might be working with outside partners and people of that stature. You're obviously working directly with a customer, and so it's important to have these collaborative sessions and make sure that, again, you put the framework in order of, these are some of the things that we need to come out from an outcome perspective. These are all the people that have a vested interest in seeing this be a success, and we want to make sure that we've given everyone the opportunity to state their intent and their perspective, what they think needs to be done. And I will tell you, there's never a situation where any one person can come in and know every single one of those key components. We need every member of the team to weigh in. Everyone's going to have their own unique perspective. Everyone's going to have their own vested interest. The outcome is going to impact everyone differently. And so it's really important that we understand all of those moving pieces so that we can collectively operate in a way that's going to be best for the needs of the many, as they would say in Star Trek, right? So I think, to best answer your question, Olena, it's really all about making sure that we collectively look to anticipate what are the ramifications of decisions at each stage. What's the desired outcome? What are the key steps that we're going to need to take to achieve that outcome? And that we're also going to be able to pivot and react and respond if and when things go awry or differently than we anticipated. And that's all the more reason why it's so important to have a connected team, because as things will inevitably not go exactly the way we anticipate, we need to be able to take a step back, look at our new surroundings, and work with a team that we trust.
Yeah, and sounds like in all of that, listening is one of the really critical skill. Because if you are bringing together the interests of different parties, both within your team and outside of your team, ability to ask the right questions and really, really listen, and then integrate and suggest and integrated ways to move forward is really a critical skill for a team leader. And yeah, I was thinking that maybe you have a story to share just before. Oh, we're already almost out of time, so we probably don't have much time for stories to
I can
share.
tell a quick story
Okay.
if you've got
Yeah.
one in mind.
Mhm.
If you got a topic in mind here, what do you want me
Well,
to?
just the yeah, you have it. You have a story.
Yeah, I'll tell a quick story. So, several years ago, there was a business group that they had been formed, and their goal was to reach out to a lot of our existing customers. And this is when I worked at a prior organization, and their goal was to reach out to existing customers and really gauge how the investment was going. The intent was to be a customer service one, but also to have line of sight to upsell and cross sell solutions. And the team was not functioning very well. In fact, they were doing 70-75% to goal traditionally for a period of several months. And it was actually, they were being looked at to disband this group. Now, a lot of these people, they would have had jobs within our organization. They just would have been put back into kind of a demoted role. But people's jobs and livelihoods would have been impacted. And this was a team that was started with a very clear vision that was, everybody agreed was of value. So while they were being discussed in one of our leadership meetings, the team's intent was to just decide, do we want to just cut this group on the spot and put them back into their old roles? Do we want to give them any additional opportunity to come together and achieve the goal? I volunteered to take this team under my purview. I had an entire other team, and I took this team under my purview. They did 78% to goal that month prior to coming under my umbrella. Now, here's the key thing. I came in immediately, Olena, and I think a lot of times when there's a new manager, a new leader, people expect them to just come in and start making knee-jerk reactions and changes and just saying, this is wrong, this is broken, and making changes accordingly. And I did none of that. I sat with the team. I spent time with them, full days, just sitting there listening to calls, getting their feedback, spent time with them one-to-one and also one-to-many, and, formed focus groups and betterment committees, and really spent time over those really couple of weeks right after working with this team, understanding, look, team, hey, this is the state that we're in. We need to have a very quick turnaround and show the value that this team can have to the organization. But I want you to be active participants in figuring out, how do we do that? We're going to have to make some changes. We're going to have to make some maybe cuts to the amount of prep time that we have between calls. We're going to have to make some changes to the call flow and things of that nature. But I want you to be an active part of all of that. So within the first 2 weeks, we made some changes. We cut the call time in between calls because, frankly, a lot of the calls that we were making, we realized weren't resulting in a customer conversation. So it was meaningless and it was hurting their productivity. And so we made some shifts around that. We changed some of the call flow and the structure based on feedback and inputs that were coming from the team. Long story short, or long story long, they were a very active participant in figuring out the strategy to take us forward. That first month that we worked together, we did 141% to the goal, best month they had ever had, and they still exist today. That was a decade ago. I guess the point is that when teams work connectedly to acknowledge the challenges that they're up against and to formulate a strategy and a plan that is in the best interest of the team moving forward, anything is possible.
Well, yeah, I love this story, Carson. Thank you for sharing. We're really running out of time now, so I'm gonna just suggest a practice that we could, you use this week as a team connect practice. And it's basically asking yourself or asking others a simple question: how present are you on a scale from 1 to 10? So when I was preparing for the podcast, I asked myself today, an hour ago, how present am I on a scale from 1 to 10? And I realized there are billion of things happening in my mind, so much noise, so much clutter. So I wasn't really present. And the second question is, what would happen if you allow yourself to become a little more present? And as I explored that, I just felt that amazing creativity and ideas and focus um, on what I was doing in that very moment. So we encourage you to try that, and we will also have a post about that, so you could revisit this practice. And I'm gonna ask Carson and myself to check out with what's your one takeaway from today's conversation that you're gonna take with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Elena. Really a pleasure to do this with you. My big takeaway from today is to be clear. I think that's the key element, is being clear and setting expectations. Be clear when you're asking for feedback and guidance, and also be clear when you are assigning roles and setting the stage for your team to be connected and to be successful.
Thank you, Carson. I really appreciate having this conversation with you. And my takeaway is I'm gonna practice this. How present am I in everything I'm doing? Asking myself every now and then, how present am I when I walk, when I talk to someone, when I read, and allowing myself to be a little more present.
Very good.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate everyone who listened to us. This is a Connected Teamwork podcast, and we'll be here every Monday at noon PST. Thank you and goodbye.